This video is brought to you by my lovely patrons. I saw the new Mean Girls, and it was really bad. The original Mean Girls is one of my favorite comedy movies of all time. It has some of the sharpest writing from the 2000s, and as far as satires from that time period go, this one has the most staying power. The film oozes with wit, its characters are instantly recognizable, and it supplied endless fodder for references in the years since its release. So back in 2018, when a musical adaptation of the film waltzed its way onto Broadway, the world met it with some hesitancy. Despite Tina Fey, the original screenwriter, coming on board to write the book, people, and by people I mean me, worried that it might become a shell of itself when brought to the stage. Broadway historically has had plenty of adaptations of films that have fallen flat on their face, sometimes literally, and for something as near and dear to many people as Mean Girls is, the possibility of this happening was more than likely. And that was, in fact, the case, but rather than people disliking the show because of how much they preferred the original, people mostly disliked it because it was bad. The songs were forced and rather trite, a lot of the characters were dumbed down to their basic archetypes, and the book was markedly less funny than the original film. Now, I actually saw this musical on Broadway back in 2018, and as an eager little musical theater-loving 8th grader, I actually liked Mean Girls the musical. Which is a little embarrassing for me to say. And I want to emphasize this now, despite me saying that Mean Girls is a bad musical, and agreeing with that, I do have some nostalgia for this show. What can I say? It's a disease. Most of the songs in the original musical, despite my understanding of their objective flaws, I can vibe to. Except for I'd Rather Be Me. That song just sucks ass.
So your best friend screwed you over, acted nice when she not nice.
Like, that has to be in the top 10 worst lyrics of all time, right? Anyway, Mean Girls still did very well, go figure, and launched a few tours to relish in its success. But they couldn't just stop there, no. Because soon after, they announced that they were going to make yet another Mean Girls movie, this one an adaptation of the musical. Now here's the thing. I really like movie musicals. I grew up watching The Sound of Music with my grandma. I adore movies like Little Shop of Horrors, Grease, Jesus Christ Superstar. Hell, when I was a little kid, I even liked that shitty Into the Woods movie. Don't worry, I grew out of that. So I want you to know that I'm not coming at this video from the perspective of some guy who hates musicals. Trust me, that's not the case. I made a video gushing over The Creature from the Black Lagoon musical, and that thing sucks dick. I went into this movie really wanting it to be good. I tried, but almost everything about this movie fails phenomenally. It seems that almost no one likes this movie. Around the week that it released, my entire TikTok For You page was people busting its balls. But why is that? Well, I have a few ideas. Much like the amount of perfect songs in the film Grease 2, this video comes to you in 10 parts. Part 1, the advertising. The first trailer for this new version of Mean Girls was released on November 8th, 2023, only 2 months before the film was set to release. And to the surprise of theater dorks like myself who knew what the movie was going to be, the trailer did not show any of the musical aspects of the film. To any average viewer of this trailer, it looked like they were just doing a reboot of Mean Girls, with a lot of dancing, but no singing at all. How odd. Other than that, though, can we just talk about how this is like a really bad trailer? Half of the jokes are references, the editing is really jarring, and overall, it's just annoyingly self-aware.
Move.
Hey, PG-13, please.
But it is certainly egregious that they don't even mention the fact that this is an adaptation of the Broadway musical. It's not just a mere reboot. Why did they do this? Well, it was theorized by many people on the internet that Mean Girls was not advertised as a musical because movie studios believe that general audiences don't like movie musicals. And that was recently proven correct by a studio executive at Paramount.
We didn't want to run out and say, it's a musical, because people tend to treat musicals differently. This movie is a broad comedy with music.
He then goes on to say,
To start off saying musical, you have the potential to turn off audiences. I want everyone to be equally excited.
and yeah, That's abundantly clear. The music, while the impetus for the reboot, was clearly not put at the forefront of this film. It's sloppy, somehow both overproduced and underproduced, and none of the songs are performed as if it's a musical. I'll touch on that a bit later, though. What is with this notion that people hate movie musicals? There are definitely some people who just won't touch the genre. Maybe they don't like music, perhaps they find the whole thing cringe, but I almost guarantee you that most people have at least one movie musical that resonates with them or is special to them in one way or another. At the very least, one they passively like. Why else would Frozen, The Little Mermaid, or Cinderella be as iconic today as they were when they were released? I'll tell you, it's not just because they're Disney, it's because they're good movies. Hell, literally as recent as 2 years ago, there was a show tune from a movie musical that was the biggest song in the world. People don't dislike movie musicals, they dislike bad movies. So they gave Mean Girls the old "don't tell them it's a musical" treatment. That's okay. Other movies have done that recently. Look at Wonka or The Color Purple. I didn't even know Wish was a musical. I thought that song playing in the trailer was just some crappy pop song. Well, it kinda was, but still. The next trailer they dropped wasn't gonna hide that it was a musical. They were gonna tell you what it was right from the start.
My name is Regina George.
Oh, that's it? Okay, this trailer also sucks. The rest of the trailer is just like one of those dramatic remixes to the rest of the song. We don't get to see any more of the number. The trailers are just hiding what this movie is going to be. That's not a good sign. Already these advertisements are banking on you knowing the original film, or at least the musical, despite flaunting that it's not your mother's Mean Girls. They're right. It's not. It's much worse. At this point, I'll be honest with you guys, I was still hopeful. I hold the original Mean Girls film so close to my heart. I rewatch it pretty much yearly at this point, and it influenced a lot of my writing from a young age. I just love the way it uses comedy to deal with real issues, the way the jokes stack on top of each other, the way each performance elevates those jokes to the nth degree. I can't stress enough how much I adore this movie. So I saw the new movie opening night, and I dragged my friend Riley along with me. Riley isn't a huge fan of musicals, despite us meeting through theater in high school, but we were on a road trip together when the movie came out, and he was nice enough to see it with me, even when he knew the movie probably wasn't gonna be for him. I told him pretty much everything I just told you before we went in, but oh my god, I didn't think I'd feel so bad for bringing a friend with me. I wanted to like it so bad. Part 2, Punching Down. To punch up a script is to read through it and make it funnier. First drafts of screenplays, even for some comedy films, often neglect to put the right amount of jokes within each scene, usually because they're just trying to get the story down. Because they're so focused on making sure they write something coherent, witty dialogue isn't always the priority. Some studios even hire people to take scripts for films or television shows and punch them up.
You know how I make a lot of money nowadays? I do punch-up on movies. And punch-up is where they have a script they're about to shoot, and it's not quite funny enough, and they bring in a bunch of writers and comedians, and we sit around the table and get drunk and just add jokes to it. And you can move scenes, cut stuff, go, that scene's too long, that scene should be moved up, that scene should be moved back, and you really kind of take the script apart and make it work.
I'm telling you this because the script for Mean Girls 2024 feels as if they took the script from the original film and punched it down. They made pretty much every joke in this movie less funny. This is done in many different ways. Some jokes are similar in essence, but are made longer, which ultimately kills them. This very simple scene in the original film
Got in trouble for the most random things.
Where are you going?
Oh, I have to go to the bathroom.
You need the lavatory pass.
Okay, can I have the lavatory pass?
Nice try. Have a seat.
turns into this.
Where do you think you're going there, Hotshot?
I need to urinate.
No way, Jose.
It's Katie.
Well, Katie, first thing you need to do is ask permission. But the second thing you'll need is this lavatory pass that is shaped like a sperm whale. Get it?
May I please have the lavatory pass?
No, you may not. You may go sit back down. You can go at lunch. Nice try, kiddo.
Let me kill these jokes really quickly by explaining them. One has so few words and gets its point across very clearly, and the other tries to milk every second. Jokes should be simple and understood by your audience, and the way most comics achieve this is by brevity.
I tried to walk into Target, but I missed.
The first scene introduces the concept that Katie doesn't know what school is supposed to be like. Therefore, she tries to just get up and go to the bathroom, a big no-no in American high schools. That is the joke. In the 2024 film, the scene muddies what is supposed to be the punchline by adding more and more to deviate from the original film.
That is shaped like a sperm whale. Get it?
Get it? In comedy, less is more. Like in this next example, just adding one word over-explains the joke.
What are you?
I'm a mouse. Duh.
I'm a sexy mouse. Duh.
That's so much worse. Nothing is implied anymore, therefore taking away what was funny about the original joke. This is further exemplified with the introduction of Caltine bars. In the original film, the joke of the scene plays out with almost no words.
What are Caltine bars?
They're these weird Swedish nutrition bars. My mom used to give them to the kids in Africa to help them gain weight. They're these weird nutrition bars my mom uses to lose weight.
Give me it.
With the given context that the two are trying to destroy Regina George's life, you understand what they're thinking. But the new film has to spell it out for you.
What is this, by the way? It's terrible.
Oh, it's a Caltine bar. Here, my mom used to give them to elderly people in Capito to help them gain weight.
I can feel it working.
We should, crush this up and put it in Regina's food.
What?
Subtlety is entirely out of the window because at the end of the day, this film stands on weaker legs than the original. The original film plants seeds from the very start that allow for jokes to pop up naturally throughout the entire movie. For example, at one point, Damien and Aaron Samuels walk in on Coach Carr making out with a student. This is immediately put into the burn book and later sets up the joke.
I pulled these two off each other. Coach Carr, step away from the underage girls.
And there are a ton of jokes like this in the film, from fetch to my boobs can predict the weather, even the bus hitting Regina George. This film loves to foreshadow and refer back to itself, and it does so cleverly and to its advantage. It trusts the audience to remember the movie they're watching and to be active viewers. The new Mean Girls not only doesn't trust its audience, it neglects this aspect of the original film. Some jokes are just changed for no reason. Take one of my favorites from the original film.
Her name is Caddy. Caddy Heron. Where are you, Caddy?
That's me. It's pronounced like Katie.
My apologies. I have a nephew named Anthony, and I know how mad he gets when I call him Anthony. Almost as mad as I get when I think about the fact that my sister named him Anthony.
I mean, that's just absurd, memorable, and everybody knows someone with a name that's just slightly off like that. It's relatable. The reboot changes it into something much less relatable.
Her name is Caddy.
It's Katie. Katie Heron.
My apologies. I will commit that to memory. KD, like the Canadian songstress KD Lang, and Heron, like the illegal street drug.
It's so strange to strip Mean Girls of its relatability, one of the most compelling parts of the original film. There are some changes that I want to point out that may not be objectively worse, but I still hate them and they didn't make me laugh. Like, the simplicity of this next line will always trump the complicated mess of this new one.
Laura, I don't hate you because you're fat. You're fat because I hate you.
Alyssa, I'm sorry I said you look like you comb your hair with a chicken bone. I know you're vegetarian.
I'm not saying that these jokes are sacred and can't be made funnier. I'm just saying that they weren't. They all have a severe lack of punch to them.
I think I'm joining the mathletes.
No. You cannot do that. That is social suicide.
You cannot join mathletes. That is socially ruinous.
Really? Really? The question likely on your mind is why. Why did they do this? Why take something as deeply iconic as Mean Girls and remove everything quotable? I have one theory. There's this sort of unspoken rule in comedy that once you've made a joke, you can't make it again. This is the part where I sympathize with Tina Fey here. She already told these jokes once before in a screenplay, and if she were to tell them again, they wouldn't get laughs from the audience. Or at least, they wouldn't get real laughs. So much of comedy comes from surprise. You're surprised the first time you hear Regina George say, "Boo, you whore," or Karen say she has ESPN or something. Both of those lines have become deeply iconic because of that. But if you were to hear these jokes you knew for a second time and told by other people, well, they would become less funny. They're no longer jokes, they're statements. It's like a scratch and sniff sticker. Over time, it loses that ripe scent it once had, and eventually you get tired of smelling the same old banana. I once heard the idea of retelling famous jokes described by a comedian like this: they won't laugh, they'll clap. And that's just not the same. So Tina Fey, being a titan of comedy, definitely understands this and attempted to rewrite her script so that it had the same story and tone as the original, just with different jokes. And that's where it becomes clear that Mean Girls wasn't really in need of a reboot. The jokes are different, yes, but they also feel forced. They feel like someone crammed square jokes into a circle-shaped screenplay. And because of that, the film still gets no laughs. When I saw this movie in theaters, the only time people laughed was when they saw something they knew. Be that a joke from the original film that made it through the rewrite, an actor, or a piece of imagery. And to me, that's just sad. I actually really like Tina Fey. I think she's a brilliant comedy writer, but this is an unfair task for any comedy writer to have to do. I also think that she's very noticeably been taken down a peg in these past few years. Okay, I'm gonna get to some serious stuff really quickly. If you haven't heard, Tina Fey garnered some controversy back in 2020 because of a few pieces of dialogue from the original Mean Girls that did not age well, and the use of blackface in her show 30 Rock. This criticism is more than valid, and represents the weakest and hackiest parts of both Mean Girls and 30 Rock. That said, I think Tina Fey took this criticism the wrong way. She was being criticized for using race itself as the butt of her jokes, and luckily those types of jokes in the original Mean Girls and even the Mean Girls musical are absent from this film. But this necessary sanitization of certain jokes has trickled down onto the jokes that didn't need changing, the jokes that everyone liked and worked. And that sort of sanitization not only translated to the jokes themselves, but the spirit of the jokes. The new Mean Girls is, yes, less problematic than the original, but it's also bland. There's no edge, and there's no surprise, and that's just a damn shame. Part 3, Cast a Movie Musical Challenge. Impossible. If you're not aware, the live-action movie musical has been a decaying genre within the past decade or so. You have your critically acclaimed heavy hitters like La La Land and Tick, Tick, Boom, and the occasional critically panned but still massive hit like The Greatest Showman, but other than that, there's supposedly a certain stigma surrounding movie musicals, right? Like that one executive at Paramount whose name doesn't deserve to be spoken said, people treat them differently. But why is that? Is that even true? Well, let's take a look at a couple of recent movie musicals that may have set this expectation. Dear Evan Hansen, Cinderella, The Prom, Cats. What do these films have in common? They're bad. These massive flops unfortunately fall much louder than small hits like Tick, Tick, Boom rise, leading big executives at film studios looking at these numbers and incorrectly assuming that they failed because they're musicals. They didn't, though. They failed because they weren't great movies to begin with. But I think there's another factor that a lot of these recent musical films have in common, even critically acclaimed ones like West Side Story or Wonka. They are cast so poorly. Ben Platt as Evan Hansen looked like a 40-year-old man LARPing as a high schooler, further heightening the film's narrative that Evan Hansen is a piece of shit. Ansel Elgort acted like he was thrust into the lead of his high school's musical a week before they opened and had only ever played lacrosse his entire life. James Corden is a cat. I rest my case. The problem here is that these films aren't cast with the actor's musicality in mind, they're cast for their acting chops or their star power, and the latter, it seems, is far more important. Why else would we see Timmy playing Willy Wonka? It's because of his beautiful eyes. And that brings us to Mean Girls, the most recent movie musical to hit theaters, in which, again, many roles were not cast for their musical talent. Some of them not even for their acting talent. Take Christopher Briney, who played Aaron Samuels in the new film. This guy could not be any more boring.
My friend Chris is having a Halloween party. Would you want to come to that?
Aaron Samuels at the beginning of the original film is portrayed as a very likable but easily manipulated guy. Regina, the moment she finds out about Katie's crush on him, starts to date him again, acting as fuel to the fire of Katie's vengeful plot. But ultimately, towards the end of the film, we remember that Aaron is actually a person. you know, who has like feelings and stuff. When he confronts Katie at her party for having become Regina, it's really powerful, and it makes Katie realize that maybe pretending to be someone else is not the solution to all of her problems. Aaron becomes yet another voice of reason in the film, which is why you like him and you're happy that he ends up with Katie at the end. Christopher Briney does not have that same understanding of Aaron as a character, as is evident by this interview.
He like sort of unintentionally like stokes the flames of this feud, and he sort of becomes a little pawn in each of their games. Like they both, Regina and Katie, take their turns like sort of like pushing him. He's just sort of there, you know, and yeah. He takes some blows, but he's just there.
This is one of the funniest takes I've ever seen an actor have about a character they are playing, and it makes his boring-ass performance make so much more sense. As an actor, you have to be on your character's side. You can't just say that your character is a pawn. Yes, that may be how your character functions in the story, but you can't just play him like a piece of wood. That's how you get boring performances.
Don't tell me to shut up.
What? Aaron, sit down.
You are a clone.
Imagine if Bryan Cranston was just like, Walter White is evil, or Aaron Paul was just like, Jesse is stupid. Not only would that be awful character analysis, but it would make Breaking Bad so dull because we'd be watching performances that only hit one note. People are complicated, and so much of the craft of acting is about unraveling a character and learning how to embody them by figuring out how they relate to you. This is just ridiculous, and let me be clear, it's not entirely his fault. This is the fault of the director, who did not help this guy out at all. And on top of that, he can't sing, so they just cut out all of his vocal parts. Jenna Fisher from that podcast about The Office is here, and I don't think that she's a bad actor, but she definitely does not elevate the poorly written dialogue she's given.
This is not who I know you to be.
This is not who I know you to be. Who talks like that?
Angry.
And finally, we need to talk about Angourie Rice as Katie. I've seen Rice get a lot of hate for this performance on the internet. It seems that she's everyone's new favorite celebrity to roast. In all honesty, though, I just feel kind of bad for her. Not because I think her performance was good, it wasn't, but because she was just really poorly cast. And that's not entirely her fault. In the original musical, the role of Katie is very vocally intensive. In literally her first song, she starts belting like crazy. It's ridiculous. There's no need for her to be doing that on the first day of school. Katie is written very energetically and given a lot of vocal parts to represent those large bursts of energy.
I can't even watch when she touches his hair, and I watched a snake eat a cow. Regina needs to be toppled. Sorry, Gretchen, I swear we'll get our party now.
So one would think they would cast someone who at the very least can hold a tune. Well, let's look at that same vocal part in the new film.
I can't even watch when she touches his hair, and I watched a snake eat a cow. Regina needs to be toppled. Sorry, Gretchen, I swear we'll get our party now.
Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, that shot is crazy. The cinematography in this movie is so unsettling. Notice how the camera is like always on some sort of crane or jib. It's constantly moving in these nauseating sweeping motions. It's like every shot of Mark Wahlberg in The Departed, but directed by Martin Scorsese's character from Shark Tale. Yeah, that's a joke just for me. Also, you can hear the pitch correction churning on Rice's vocals. Not only is the melody opted down to accommodate for this, but it loses almost all of the energy the original had. They can try to emulate that energy with close-up fisheye shots all they want, but it does not compensate for the lack of prowess Angourie Rice's voice has. I don't generally have a problem with pitch correction, and people who do typically don't know much about modern music production. It's important to note that pitch correction is used on pretty much everything nowadays, and that's not because pop stars can't sing as well as they used to be able to or anything like that. It's just because Well, we can. If we can make Ariana Grande sound that much better on her new single, why wouldn't we? My problem with pitch correction only exists surrounding musicals, actually. There's been this really awful recurrence on a lot of Broadway cast albums lately in which they use pitch correction way too much in a way that inhibits the original performance. Just take a listen to the ending of the song Giants in the Sky from the cast album of the most recent revival of Into the Woods.
There are big, tall, terrible, awesome, scary, wonderful giants in the sky.
Do you hear that?
In the sky.
That's bad pitch correction on a Broadway cast album. These performers sing these songs 8 times a week. They don't need that much pitch correction. There's something so lovely about the original cast album of Into the Woods and so many others from before this onslaught of overproduction. Imperfections are more realistic, and they add life to music that frankly needs life to function. We're telling stories here, not making the most perfect pop song. That's why the music frustrates me so much in Mean Girls, and the overuse of autotune ends up feeling like a lack of respect for the craft of theater. I know it's a film and not a live musical, but it should at the very least attempt to capture that raw energy exhibited on the stage. Unfortunately, Angourie Rice's acting performance does not make up for her singing, as a lot of it is incredibly understated and kind of hard to read. I don't entirely blame Angourie Rice for this unfortunate casting, but I also don't think she tried all too hard in this role. Her performance feels very phoned in. I also don't understand why 2 of the leads in this movie musical can't sing. It makes Rice look really bad, and ultimately that's the fault of the director and whoever decided to cast people who needed vocal training. There are some good performances here. Renee Rapp as Regina, Avantika as Karen, even Auli'i Cravalho as Janice. But unfortunately, the text of the film and the surrounding performances could hardly save them. This all leads to something that I think is really obvious about Hollywood, which is that they don't respect movie musicals. They must view them as antiquated because big executives and the people they put in charge of directing these musicals clearly don't understand them. They trust audiences so little to go see a movie musical that they neglected to advertise it as one, and they didn't cast someone who can sing in the lead role. After all, you might treat it differently. Hi patrons, thank you so much for watching the first preview of my new Mean Girls video. I'm open to really any feedback you want to give me, any criticism, any suggestions, any thoughts generally that you have. If you feel so inclined, leave a comment down below about what you think of the video. This is only about the first third of the video. There's a lot more that I get into later in the video, so if it's something like, hey, you didn't mention this, odds are I'll probably mention it in the next parts of the video. There's a lot more. This is really just the surface of the video, but I wanted to get out something to you guys to let you know that I'm actually working on videos. So there's a plane going by and my window's open. Sorry that is loud, but thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I'll probably have some more of this video ready. Let's just say next week. Next week, I'll probably have the next third of the video ready, and I'll upload that. Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.